All right, guys, so I just watched this clip from NBC News that blew my mind, okay? Because when you talk about propaganda from the mainstream liberal media, this right here should be put in the propaganda hall of fame, right? Because they literally did a segment where they claimed that there was little scientific evidence to suggest that biological men have an advantage over women in sports, right? That's what they're saying. This is a news channel, guys, right? A mainstream news channel pushing this propaganda on people. And guys, this whole clip is full of nothing but lies. And it comes off the success of transgender athlete Lia Thomas, who has been dominating college swimming, as Lia Thomas is a biological man that transitioned into a woman. Okay, and all of a sudden, they start breaking records, right? They start breaking records. But the ironic thing here, guys, is that Lia Thomas actually just got a little bit of karma, because Thomas got crushed in a meet by another transgender person, right? And this transgender individual, whose name is Isaac Hensing, happens to be a woman that is transitioning into a man. And this woman that is transitioning into a man, who also cut off their breasts, right, crushed Lia Thomas in the 100-yard freestyle and the 400-yard freestyle at a recent meet. Okay, so I want you guys to understand what's going on here. A biological man transitions into a biological woman and dominates women's sports. Okay, and then a biological woman transitions into a man and then proceeds to dominate everybody, including the biological women and the biological men, right, that have transitioned to women, right? I mean, bruh, you cannot make this up. This is what is happening in 2021, guys. So that being said, seeing a clip like this, it really blows my mind. It really does, because these people, in my opinion, are responsible for the destruction of women's sports, okay? Because it seems to me that the future of women's sports is going to be biological men and biological women who are transitioning to men, dominating the sport, period. And just regular old biological women, they're going to be subject to always coming in last place, being at the back of the line. Okay, so without further ado, let's get into this clip, because this clip is absolutely unbelievable.
Speaking of athletes, here's another one who's a star, Lia Thomas. Last month, the swimmer at the University of Pennsylvania set 2 different Ivy League records. Her critics are furious, saying she shouldn't even be allowed to compete. That's because Lia Thomas is transgender and at the epicenter of this culture war, you could call it. Tomorrow is her final home meet of the season. She'll face off against Dartmouth and Yale.
This is the same meet that Lia Thomas got dominated in by the woman that is transitioning to a man. I just want you guys to understand that.
Both Penn Athletics and the Ivy League have put out statements supporting Lia. Of course, she is just the latest trans athlete to come under fire. In fact, 10 states have recently passed some kind of bill banning trans athletes from participating in youth sports.
Lie, absolute lie. And I don't understand how they can go on TV and get away with just lying like this. No state has banned transgender people from participating in sports, right? What they've done is said, hey, you have to compete based off your biological sex, period. That's not banning transgender people from sports. That's not discriminating against them. It is simply saying you have to compete based off your biological sex, because that is fair. That's all it is, right? If transgender people want to either compete among themselves or with people that match their biological sex, they're more than welcome, right? More than welcome. And I would encourage them to participate in whatever sport they want to participate in. But to sit here and say that they're being banned from competing in sports because they can't compete in competition against people that are not their same biological sex, that is a lie, right? That is an absolute lie. And I cannot believe they're perpetuating this nonsense on mainstream liberal media.
You might remember trans runner Cece Telfer was deemed ineligible to compete at the U.S. Olympic trials over the summer. So let's talk about it with Joe Yerkeba from NBC Out, who just published this piece with the latest about Lia. Joe, I'm glad to have you here. Talk about what's going on here, right? Because Lia does have support from her team, from her school, from her league, if you will. And yet,
not necessarily, because there have been reports that there are people on her team, they were anonymous, the people on her team that don't support what she's doing, that feel like they're being forced to support something that they know is unfair. But again, leave it to NBC News to leave this out, right? To act like, oh no, everybody supports this, right? Everybody supports it. Nobody has any issues with this. The only people that have issues with this are the bigots, right? It's the transphobes. They're the only people that have issues with this. Everybody else is cool with it. Okay, there's no problems, right? According to NBC News.
For some of her detractors, that doesn't seem to be enough.
Sure, yeah. So there are a few different arguments happening here. You've got an argument about fairness. There are people who oppose trans women competing in women's sports because they say it's unfair to cisgender women who aren't trans, most of whom don't receive the athletic advantages of higher testosterone levels during puberty. Though then you have folks who say there's very little scientific evidence that shows that those advantages carry over for trans women after transition.
Show me the evidence. You show me the evidence, right, that there is very little carryover in regards to the advantages that biological men maintain once they transition to women. Because what you're talking about right now, literally the story you're talking about right now, Lia Thomas, is evidence, right? That's evidence. Because the fact is that Lia Thomas has numerous biological advantages, from increased muscle mass, okay, to denser bone structure, to bigger hands, to being more flat-chested, right? We know that's an advantage because the woman that's trying to transition into a man that dominated Lia Thomas got her breast cut off, right? So they got their breast cut off because why? That's an advantage that women don't have. So again, it blows my mind. It blows my mind, okay, that this is what they're discussing on national TV as if this is fact. It's not. Men have an advantage over women when it comes to biological sports. Guys, it's so prevalent. It's crazy. There's literally a website. I encourage everybody to check it out. It's called Boys versus Women, in which it literally shows you how high school boys, the top high school boys in certain Olympic and track and field events dominate even Olympic women, right? They would dominate. They would beat Olympic women in the same event, right? If they was head-to-head competing. High school boys, not even fully developed, versus grown Olympic-level women. For a national TV outlet to go up here and to perpetuate this lie, to pretend like there's no biological advantage, or the biological advantage is very small, is negligible. It's a shame. It really is. And it just goes to show you that the reality of the world that we're living in is not based on reality. These people live in cuckoo for Cocoa Puff world, okay? Facts don't matter. Biology doesn't matter. None of that matters. It's all about the narrative.
So then you've got this argument about fairness and human rights on the other side. And trans advocates say that this question of inclusion is about more than just sports, because, you know, we're still seeing these efforts at the state level to ban trans people from using the bathrooms of their gender. So they say this debate is really part of a larger conversation about whether trans people can participate in certain aspects of society at all.
You can participate in every aspect of society. See, I hate how they frame this stuff. They say, well, just because you're not going to let me use the bathroom that doesn't match my sex, right? Oh, I can't participate in society, right? As if they can't use the bathroom at all. Just like they're trying to say, well, because you're not going to let me participate in a sport that does not match my sex, I can't participate in sports at all. That's the way they're framing it, when nobody's saying that. Everybody's like, yo, use the bathroom that matches your biological sex. You can go use the bathroom. Compete in a sport that matches your biological sex. You can play sports all you want to, right? And I'll go even further than that. Like I said, hey, when it comes to the bathroom situation, I've been an advocate of, hey, you know what? You should use whatever bathroom that matches your genitals, right? Whatever bathroom matches your genitals, use that. And the reason why is because it's less awkward, right? It's less awkward and it just makes more sense, okay? Now, when it comes to sports, we got to stick to biological sex. But I am an advocate of trans people having their own sports, having their own leagues, right? They should have that stuff so that way it's all fair. But see, the left, they don't want to do that, because if trans people had their own leagues, then they would have to support it. And the left, they simply don't really want to support it, even though they claim they do, just like they claim they support women's sports and women's rights, but they don't show up to any women's sports events, right? And they're actively pushing against women's rights, right? By allowing biological men to compete against them, right? That's what's happening. That's what's happening.
Talk about how the NCAA is handling this.
Yeah, so the NCAA released a handbook with guidance for trans athletes back in 2011, and it says that trans women must complete 1 year of testosterone suppression treatment before they can compete on a women's team. And Lia had completed 2.5 years by the time she began competing. So the University of Pennsylvania pointed out that, you know, she's exceeded the NCAA protocols here.
It's not enough. It's not enough, because if you look at Lia Thomas, Thomas still maintains a lot more muscle mass, bigger hands, bone structure, all these things that don't change. They're not going to change just because you suppress your testosterone, okay? They still have that advantage. It's not enough.
You talked about this is a bigger issue sort of systemically in this country. And we said it earlier, there's 10 states that have laws that ban trans youth from participating in some of their sports.
Lie. I mean, just repeating the lie over and over and over again.
This is an issue that I think I've covered in my course of reporting here at NBC News and talked to young trans athletes. I spoke with one just recently. It's troublesome, I think, for some of these families who have kids who want to compete and who are not being allowed to.
Right, yeah, no, definitely.
Wow,
and
incredible.
The legislation is really sweeping, so it applies to public K through 12 schools and colleges, and, you know, some even applies to private schools too. And these are total bans, though their supporters would argue, you know, that they allow trans students to compete on the team of their birth sex. But, you know, like you mentioned trans student athletes, they say that that doesn't really make sense to them, because for a trans girl, for example, she's a girl in her everyday life, and everyone at school knows her as a girl. So this legislation...
But you're not a girl biologically. That's the problem, right? Those things carry over in sports. Listen, here's the thing. If you want to be, you know, a girl or whatever outside of all that, that's fine, right? Do you. I don't really care. But we're talking about sports where this stuff matters. And then again, like I said, it's a total ban. Total ban. You can compete, but because you only compete based off your sex, it's a total ban.
Is really troubling for them.
Joe Yerkeba, thank you so much for being with us tonight.
Wow, incredible. This should be put in the Propaganda Hall of Fame. I'm so serious. I mean, it was just lie after lie after lie being told, and it's like, why is it that you can't just tell the truth, right? Just tell us the facts. But the problem is that the facts don't fit their narrative. Once you tell the facts, they understand, okay, this is not fair. And again, what really bothers me is that there are good solutions out there that can satisfy everybody that are not being talked about, because for whatever reason, people want to just push this idea that men and women can compete against each other in sports on an equal playing field. And it's just not true, right? It's just not true. And again, I think that it's not really moving the conversation forward so that transgender people can actually participate in sports, right? In a way that's competitive, in a way that's going to be fair for everybody. They're not really moving that conversation forward. What they're really doing is causing a lot more unnecessary drama and division, because they simply don't want to live in reality. That's what's happening here. But let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.